Welcome, everybody, to Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I am Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. Welcome, guys. Thank you guys for joining us on Inside Scoop. We are ready. We have an awesome action-packed just night for you guys. So let's go
Speaking
ahead
of
and
joining us.
introduce who we got with us today. So we have the world famous Jackson Rudolph and the world famous Sammy Smith. Thank you guys so much for joining us.
Hand claps to y'all.
Yes,
This
yes.
is dope.
We are
going
going to have
show.
some
I'm
fun.
stoked.
We are. We're going to have a lot of fun tonight. So before we get into that, we want to let you guys know that we are sponsored by the Virtual Fight Tour. We got Virtual Fight Tour number 8 coming up April 24th, and we are excited about that. Every time it's an exciting show. So, Alex, let's get into that right now.
Yeah. You know, one of the things I love so much about the Virtual Fight Tour right now is that it's constant, all right? It's not every week. It's not every other weekend. Just once a month. You kind of know when it's going to be. You can kind of set your clock to it. So this is one of the reasons why I told Jesse, I was like, just take my credit card, put it on file, just run the thing.
Right.
Just run it, all right? I won't even worry about it. Just run it. If I miss it, that's on me, all right? But save that for another day.
I think that needs to happen anyway. That way it's just consistent, right? And
I mean,
it's a subscription. Get it done.
People will then, if they know that, they'll want to support it. And then they'll want to, maybe they'll want to watch it more. They'll be like, oh, man, I got to make sure I'm going because I'm paying for it one way or the other. I better go and watch it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. I'm just saying. Well, we're going to get into some of the fights from last Saturday, VFT 7. Jackson, you got a chance to watch it a little bit, right?
Yeah, I was watching it. I was covering it for Black Belt Magazine. Really, the two fights that stood out, or I guess it was more than two fights, was the main event. But the two events that stood out to me were the co-main and the main event. I think that we learned a lot from those two. But I'll let you kind of lead us on what we get into.
Yeah, I mean, there was some of them, like the first fight with the ladies. I was watching it the whole time, trying to get into it, and I just had to just take a step back and go, I can't dive deep into the details about this fight because their distance was so off. They were so close to each other the whole fight. So I can't even really give that deep of like insight as to, one was doing this, one was doing that, because their spacing was so incredibly off. They were great. They were very skilled, but either one of them could have been taken out by a cheeseburger. Cheeseburger is someone who don't know that they don't know, right? Sammy, if you didn't know that, that's what a cheeseburger is. Cheeseburger is someone you go in to fight and you're like, I got this one. This is a 10 point. This is a cheeseburger. That's a cheeseburger. Either one of them could have been because of how close their spacing was. Now you're fighting 3 rounds. You're in a pressure situation, in a cage. Never done it before. Things like that can happen. But it was a pretty good fight. I like their skills.
To Autumn's credit, that's part of what made that back fist automatic. They were so close the whole time. Autumn got her back fist whenever she wanted it, really.
Like, so how do you?
Maybe she was fine getting that close. Yeah.
How do you land a back fist so often without having to be offensive or defensive?
just
standing there and throwing the back fist.
Like, think about what we're saying. It's a back, not like a side kick or a round kick where it's just like you can extend it. Like, you shouldn't even be that close.
It's like when you learn it in karate class and you're standing, stationary.
Right.
Got it. Well,
So,
and one thing
they're
though,
very skilled.
we've seen this a lot though with the cage, right? We've been like, they didn't move as much. They were too straight line. We've only seen a few fights really in Virtual Fight Tour where people were really cutting angles like they should and moving, using the cage. So I still think it's in that kind of trying to figure it out phase right now,
Jeff, you're right on.
Especially when you have young fighters.
If you take a step back and you were to just go, okay, what's the big takeaways from this as a whole? That's it right there. It's the spacing. So like, all right, let's just go right down the line. Yeah. So when we get into, I was going to say the Ronald fight because Ronald won that fight. But that fight, I'm looking at it like, dude, you fought amazing in the first round. He was moving all over the place. Was never in a straight line. And you can tell, I got tired. Started sitting. He got flat-footed a couple times, and it was just in a straight line. So if he would have just fought it like his first round, it'd have been a 15-point fight. But that dude depended on that defensive back fist way too much. You know what the problem is? Here's what it was. And we've all had this before. Sammy, you've had this even when you were sparring in the classroom. You've had this before where you're fighting. You're like, man, I'm tired. And somebody comes at you and you just do something that doesn't exert a lot of energy and it works. And you go, oh, I'm doing that again. All right. And it's clearly what happened. He was like, he tried the defensive back fist and it worked. And he was like, oh, I'm doing that. And he just kept doing it, even though it wasn't working. Now, Aaron came back big time. And Aaron, it benefited his fight so much when it would go in a straight line because Aaron would just go in a straight line.
Fast too, yeah.
All he needed to do to win that by 7 points or more was just fake, get Ronald to jump, and then go. Because once Ronald got into that, because Ronald wasn't moving anywhere. He wasn't going anywhere. He didn't show him any solid, hard straight line moves. All right. So Aaron was the one bulldozing forward. So bulldoze forward, but don't let him know when you're coming. Sometimes the overview of the match can be simple. All right. You don't need to break everything down in its detail. Sometimes the overview can be simple. What do you think, Jackson?
To Ronald's credit, though, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So maybe it wasn't just that he was tired and the back fist was working. It was simply the back fist was working, so why not lean on it? A lot of times we don't see the fadeaway back fist score that much, but he was scoring on it. At one point, he scored the fadeaway back fist on 3 consecutive clashes. So if it's working that well, he's not going to abandon that. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when Aaron would go in for the blitz, he would lead with his head a little bit, made it even easier, and he wasn't adjusted and making the fakes. And when it comes to the cardio for a lot of these VFT fighters, I think there's 3 things that we got to cut them some slack on, right? One of the things, I don't remember who I heard talking about it. I think it was
probably Monday.
Yeah, I don't remember who I heard talking about it, but when you're in a cage like that, that cage is going to have a little bit more give when you're bouncing than you would on a regular mat. Right?
It was on CP.
That's going to take more energy out of you. You're also fighting 3 rounds, which I know these fighters train a lot more than 3 rounds, but they don't often do 3 competitive rounds back to back to back with adrenaline and all of the circumstances that come in with a live event and everything like that. So that's a little bit of a factor. And then there's also the fact that you're stuck in the cage, which is going to require more action. A lot of the times when you're in an open ring, you can move around a little bit more. You can get out of bounds if you need to. There's more opportunities to catch your breath because of that movement. When you're in the cage, you're clashing all the time. So you don't have those moments where you're not as active. You can catch your breath. You're almost always in a clash, and that's going to drain the fighters a little bit more. So
and
we see a lot of VFT fighters burn out, but you can't. You got to cut them some slack on that.
Right. Well, and these fights, Jackson, have been way faster than anything else we've seen. Like, and that's something I really like too, is the action goes fast. You know what I mean? Like, how many of us have gone on YouTube and try to watch point fight matches, and we're watching
don't go like this,
a 2-minute point fight match, and we're like, why is this a 7-minute long video? You know what I mean? And this is, 6 minutes that's done in fast, so that's what I really like about it. And the cage, I think, is what brings that,
Well, so along with that, so you're right. So fighting, like I had some matches where I had to fight in a kickboxing ring before. And it messes with the psychology of it, right? So you get in the kickboxing ring that you've seen, even though you're point fighting, you find yourself not really point fighting because you're elevated, you're on the stage, you see everybody else with their shirts off, getting ready to kickbox, and you think like that's you when you're like, calm down, guy. That ain't you. You're the intermission show. All right. You're point fighting. But you find yourself trying to do that, and it messes with you. You need to prep yourself mentally. But like you were just saying, Jackson, like they train, from way more than 3 rounds. I was shocked at how gassed Justice got.
Yeah. Me too.
Come on. I think first round it was what, 10-2?
Yeah, I believe so.
10-2. And it could have should have been way more. And it was the same thing. Like, we don't need to go over it. It was the same thing. I got to give Michael credit. He didn't have a lot of variety for what he was doing, but he just did it almost kind of like what Aaron was doing, just straight line, all right? Just like, I'm just going to do this thing. And Justice was so much more skilled, so much more athletic. And then when he got tired, I got to believe, because I've had this thought process before. As he was giving up points, don't worry about it. I'm going to get it back. Did you see what I did to him first round? Don't worry about it. I'll get this thing back. And then even when he found himself like down for a moment, he's like, no, I'll get this thing back. And that is a dangerous thing to do, especially in an environment you've never been in before.
Never been in, yeah.
Right? Against an opponent you've never fought before. Right? And when he was saying, remember when he was on the show last week, and he was like, I'm going to win by 15. And I'm like, come on now. After round one, I thought he's going to blow that out of the water. He's talking about he's going to score the most points in VFD history.
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is some lofty goals. But yeah,
hey, he
dang near did it.
Well, and all right, what was that after that? What we got?
Java and Julio.
Java and Julio. Yeah.
I mean, but it was the same thing though. Java, if you've ever seen or fought Java and you sit in a straight line, just punch yourself.
Yep.
It would be quicker. Just punch yourself, right? Because you ain't getting away from it, right? I mean, you could defensive side kick him, but he's so much bigger and stronger than you that he's gonna go through that dang thing.
And he's such an athlete, dude. Like it doesn't matter what age he is. Like he's still gonna be. This guy's like insane, you know.
Now, this is where it started to cut out. It started to get a little choppy there for me. But even watching it though, I was trying to put myself mentally in Julio's like mindset. Like, why is Julio not moving as much or moving his leg as much? And I gotta believe a strategy could have been, I'm going to see if I can beat him at his game this way, see if I can stop him from scoring that punch, right? And then now I force him to change it, because I'm going to say something that might be controversial. Blocks don't exist anymore in point fighting. Blocks are over. There's no such thing as a block. The clash is the modern day block. You want to block someone? Someone's coming at you.
At the same time.
There's no such thing as blocking a blitz.
Right.
There's no someone blitzes. You're like, oh, I'll block that. There is no block.
The exception is leg checks, when people check the kick and then follow over the top. But yeah, nobody's blocking blitzes.
Right.
But
a blitz, how do you block that? You can block it, but do you ever get the credit for that? Never. Right? Never. A great example is a great buddy of mine, Greg Betlock. Right? Oh gosh, these guys and I used to have battles with that. And I'm like, I'm never blocking your blitz anymore because you can't. Or someone like Laszlo, he's just too dang fast. He could blitz and has like punched you in the butt, but don't matter. You just saw this guy fly. Right? How do you not give him the point? Right. So I gotta believe that could have been a process. It's just like, all right, I'm gonna clash with him, get him to stop, get him to hesitate. But that didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, if that was the strategy, Java's the stronger, longer fighter. So if you're trying to outclash the stronger, longer fighter, the stronger, longer fighter is probably going to get the call the majority of the time.
Exactly.
I know.
Yep.
I know. So then the Chance and Ant fight.
Hey,
Chance
turning, man. Ant, dude. Ant just man.
Anthony's right. Leave me the heck alone.
That's right.
Leave me alone, man. I mean, he only lost one time.
Yeah, it was 1 point or sudden death.
Yeah. So, I mean,
and two, someone a good amount lighter than him as well.
It was Brandon, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't put him at platinum because he has at least that one loss, but it's like he should be up there. He should be gold.
But his wins are getting better. You know, like this was a high level win for him against Chance. You know, he had a good one against Chris. He had,
he had the blowout against Ben. He also had the team win too. So
I think he lost his fight, so that was the only thing. But yeah, I know.
You gotta look at this and you're like, what? Yeah, who else? Yeah, you want to see him fight more people because he keeps fighting. He's active. He's good.
Right.
But yeah, when Chance was on, he was like, I'm more athletic, I'm more skilled, I can do that. And I think he's right, but there was plenty of times in that fight when Chance would fake and Anthony didn't bite on it. And
Right.
he blitzed on Chance's face and Chance didn't have his hand out to stop it. There was one instance where Chance just steps in, boom, fakes, and Anthony he just hit him almost like the girls fight when he just hit him with the back fist.
Right.
It was the same thing. So, and that demoralizes you as a fighter when you're feeling like I'm all pumped up, I'm jacked, and you give him a hard fake and you get smacked in the face while doing that. What the frick do you do after that?
All right.
Yeah. I mean, my takeaway before we get to the main event, I wanted to give my takeaway because I think it's important. I think that fight and then the last couple of fights that Anthony's had in Virtual Fight Tour proves the fact that Anthony Merricks is an underrated point fighter in today's game.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, I think that Anthony is someone, and if we think about it, back in 2019 when Martial Arts Network was doing the end of year awards and everything, you were talking about best heavyweights. You were talking about Avery and Cam, and then the honorable mention in that conversation was Anthony Merricks.
Yeah,
and so it's like, Anthony Merricks is somebody that could, if he can, when we get back to real tournaments in person, if he finds a way to beat an Avery or a Cam once or twice, then all of a sudden we're like, okay, now Anthony Merricks is one of the top heavyweights in America, maybe one of the top heavyweights in the world, right? He hasn't had the opportunity to do that yet. And so he's just been beating everybody else along the way, with the exception of Brandon, who, like you said, is the lighter fighter, better cardio, in a VFT setting. Brandon had the advantage. But to me, that fight, it was Anthony proving how underrated he is. And we hear people all the time talking about, can I get my respect now? I think Anthony didn't ask for it, and that's why we should give it to him. Anthony Merricks deserves his respect.
Agreed. Definitely.
So what do you think? I mean, what if he and Cam fight?
Well, I mean, they fight all the time. So I mean,
no, I mean, VFT.
Oh, you mean on VFT? Oh,
yeah.
I didn't say that Anthony would beat Cam. I think Anthony would fight Cam well. But I mean, I admit I have a strong bias towards both Cam and Avery because I love the both of them. So it's hard for me to make those picks. But I mean, I didn't say that he would beat Cam. I said that he needs to try to beat Cam or Avery at one of these American events. U.S. Open comes back out of Atlanta, whatever. Yeah. And then if he can get one of those signature wins under his belt, that puts him in that conversation.
The other thing that Anthony does that we forget too is like he makes it to finals of open weights. He makes it to finals of grands. Like even the North Georgia Open, he made it to the final. And he beat Kevin. Who beat Bailey. Like he was. He's putting himself in there. It's not like he's just losing in division or losing, in semis or whatever, and is like on the cusp. No, he's getting up there. So it's just sometimes it just takes a while to string those wins together to make it really mean, the big one.
Okay. So, I'm going to say one last thing about Anthony.
And then we'll go to our next one.
And Anthony is in a short company with being able to switch sides and be effective. When he was fighting, because like Chris Walker mentioned this, and he was like Anthony needs to stay on his left. He is a right side. Anthony is a right side fighter. But when he fights Chance, if he fights Chance on his right, he lets Chance or other fighters like that, right, do things that work well for them. But when he was on his left, he took away the things that work well for Chance, right? And he had an advantage. Some people can switch and fight both sides, like I can, but let's be honest. I can't do the same stuff on my left that I can do on my right. Get the heck out of here. That ain't happening. You know what I mean? So, all right.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap up the last fight and then go into our other topic. So,
yeah, last fight I think was very simple. I mean, I think the All-Stars are very skilled. I was actually pretty impressed with James. I didn't really know much about him, but I think they didn't have that killer dog in them.
Yeah,
they did. Right. I just think they need more reps. They need more dog. They need more of that dog mentality to just get out there and just say, I don't really give a F who you are. I'm fighting you, and I'm winning every single clash. I didn't see it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just that simple.
Yeah.
Yep.
And one thing that struck me is since the last time that we saw Tyson fight in Virtual Fight Tour, I think was in Texas, right? He fought I think he was a kid on Gypsy. I forgive me, I can't remember his name.
Yeah,
but
Manuel.
I think that even the Tyson that we saw in that team fight was an evolved Tyson. Like I had not had a chance to watch Tyson very much until he started doing more VFT stuff. Watching him against those All-Stars kids, Tyson Ray is special.
Yeah.
Like Tyson Ray has a chance to be the next great lightweight point fighter. And there's a squad of those juniors right now that are moving up into the adult division.
It's crazy.
That it's going to be really crazy. Exactly. I mean, I was just down in Texas teaching a seminar at Alex Mancias' school. I trained with him and got to see him train. Some kid trains like an animal. That kid's going to be great too. And the battles that Alex and Tyson and some of these others are going to have, Jason Latona when he's moving up. I mean, the battles that these guys are going to have are insane. And then the other thing is that because Tyson's so special and because Tyson's got the swag and Tyson got the lead, everybody forgets about how good Darren Payne was.
Yeah,
that was the thing. People were so focused on the Pow and Tyson part, they forgot about Darren. Darren, they call him D-Stacks for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Kid can fight.
Yeah, it was good. Hey, but let's not forget about Kwame.
Yeah, that was cool.
That was a fun fight. I loved his attitude after the fight. He's like, nah, you take the interview, coach. You take it. I ain't talking to you. All right, that's cool.
That's awesome. But yeah, overall, another great VFT. And all right, let's get into we're just gonna talk about forms, weapons, sport karate, just some ideas. And what we want to do is this week was more of talking about current generation, top stars from the current generation, and just us talk. And in a couple weeks, we're going to have maybe next week, it may be the week after, but we're going to have some from the mid 2000s range competitors. They're going to come on and kind of have the same type discussion. So I'll release those names next week or later or at the end, but that's going to be a fun one as well. So that way we're going to keep having this topic and just kind of let everyone kind of share different things, and that way we can get some different opinions on how we can grow as a sport and maybe what we're lacking and things like that. So, all right. So Sammy, you haven't been able to talk as much on this 23 minutes. So let's kick it off with you. Let's just kind of talk right now. Like, what is the biggest thing that you are enjoying in this current phase of sport karate? All right. I know it's a difficult time right now, but what is one thing that you're enjoying?
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say that when you were saying like the mid 2000s, it's kind of funny. I feel like super old, but Jackson and I are both like mid 2000 competitors because
True.
I mean, I started in 2004 and I'm not exactly sure when Jackson started. He can, let you guys.
Right.
Okay. So yeah, there we go.
I mean, in adults, but okay. I get what you're saying.
I guess Jackson and I both feel pretty old right now, but as far as, the current, generation and what's happening in sport karate right now, I think, it's unfortunate what happened with this pandemic, but I think it also gave a lot of people time to, really push themselves and really grow and really like, I've seen so many online competitions, virtual tournaments, and, stuff along like those lines. So I think it pushed the creativity boundary a little bit more. I think people had more time to like really try to develop, more skill sets because like when you're in the middle of a season, you don't really get a break. So there's really no time where you can go back and kind of, reinvent yourself in a way to say you're kind of just on go mode. And then, people usually upgrade their forms around US Open time and Diamonds time. But now that we kind of all had this time without any, go besides the online events, I think a lot of people got to reinvent themselves. And I think that when we get to come back to in-person tournaments, a lot of those like, underdog type of kids, I feel like they're gonna, be at the top of the division and really surprise a lot of people. So, it's always good to, take a break and try to, up your skill set. And the people who are working hard during this time, it's definitely gonna show. And I think a lot of people are gonna be surprised when we all get onto the mat. There's gonna be a lot of new faces that are gonna be at the top of each division.
Definitely. What do you think, Jackson?
What up, Gabrielle?
Hey, Gabrielle, love you. Anyway, so as far as sport karate in general goes, I actually, because I want to talk a little bit about point fighting first, and I'll get into forms and weapons. But I think that this time has been really important for point fighting because the problem with point fighting on a television national scale for so many years with ESPN was, well, how do you make point fighting exciting for somebody that doesn't know anything about martial arts, right? And I think that we've seen through both Virtual Fight Tour and Pro Point and the differences in their promotions, I think that they've shown proof of concept. They've shown that point fighting can be a spectator sport, and that's something that's really, really important, especially moving forward as tournaments seek TV deals and things of that nature, right? So I think that that's something that's huge for point fighting is the fact that multiple entities have proved that you can make point fighting a spectator sport. You can even pitch it as a family-friendly sport with no knockouts, stuff like that, right? Which gives it kind of a new angle compared to a lot of the combat sports that are popular right now, MMA obviously being the biggest. So I think that that's one thing that's really beneficial for point fighting. But as we focus on forms and weapons, I agree with what Sammy is saying about how we are going to see some new faces kind of come out of the woodworks. Those competitors that may have been underdogs or a little bit underrated before, been training really hard and kind of having a come up when we come back to tournaments. You're also going to get judges that have a clean slate because I feel like momentum is a real thing in sport karate. So if somebody stacks up 2, 3, 4 overall wins in a row, they become more and more difficult to beat with each time up until I think there is a carrying capacity. I think once you win a certain number of overalls in a row, the judges get tired of you and they're going to make you lose no matter what, right? But I feel like when somebody's stacking together 2, 3 wins, trying to get 4, 5, 6, the judges are more willing to go with that competitor because they've proven that they're that good that they deserve to win, right? And so now you don't have anybody that's hot. You don't have anybody that has a streak because there's no streak to build. So you're going to have a lot of underdogs that have a little bit more of an opening where it's like, we don't know who the top weapons competitor in 14 to 17 is right now because we haven't seen enough of them. We don't know who the best 13 and under girl is right now because we haven't seen them against each other in over a year, right? And so I think that also kind of just the absence from seeing these competitors provides an opportunity for more faces to come out. And one more thing, just very briefly, there's a lot of competitors that maybe otherwise wouldn't have had it that now have newfound confidence because they went and they became a sportmartialarts.com virtual champion or they became a NASCAR virtual world champion. And so they do this virtual stuff and they're like, hey, I'm a world champion now. I can go win an NASCAR tournament, which in some cases may be true. In some cases, maybe not.
Come on.
In many cases, maybe not. But those competitors are going to have newfound confidence, and I don't have a problem with that because they're going to go to the tournament and they're going to be competing to win. Whereas if this had never happened, they might not have that confidence. They might just be like, oh, well, the seeds are going to win or whatever. This newfound confidence could be a good thing for getting deeper divisions, getting more people out there. But, I mean, obviously, you're going to have some people that just because of the way the virtual tournaments worked out, maybe had a little bit easier of a way and might wind up being disappointed. But that's the nature of the beast in this sport.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. I mean, there's several that I can think of, just kids in my mind that have done like, I don't know, hundreds of virtual tournaments and have just stayed so active that like they've created a name for themselves in some way, and even have gotten on teams that before they weren't on, from doing virtual tournaments. So
wait a minute, time out right there, Jeff.
Yeah.
What do you mean gotten on teams?
That has happened.
People are getting on teams now?
On someone from Jackson's team really started getting a lot of pub and focus.
Okay, I see.
Dax Howard, right?
And
do we have someone? I mean, even again, Caleb, like someone we talked, Caleb Broyle. He's someone who competed like hundreds of events. And
that is one thing I will say.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the virtual tournament so much. Sammy, I don't know where you're at on it, but Caleb Boyle is someone I did not know before the virtual tournament started. Kid's all right. I'm going to say that. He's nice. Sammy, where are you at on the virtual tournaments?
Thumbs
down.
Me personally, I rather compete in person tournaments just because the vibe is just a little bit different. Although you guys do know that I compete on the virtual forums tour. That is the only,
Now,
virtual forms,
that was a dope
competition
lineup.
Yeah, that
that
was
I
fun.
that was fun. That was really fun. And I was just I needed to do something because I was like going crazy and like I needed, something to like kind of look forward to. So that was kind of like the saving grace in like a tournament like that. But as far as like, competing like super dedicated to every single virtual tournament, like it's not for me. I rather
Right.
just, be on the outside supporting my students and, helping them either film for, the tournaments or just getting them overall prepared because I've been doing a super amount of teaching lately. So I rather just, leave it to them to do that. Hopefully, the in-person tournaments will resume very shortly because I'm dying to get back onto the mat. But
Yeah.
me personally, I'll skip on the virtual tournaments. I think it's a great idea to, get those kids like, stay motivated and, keep them,
Should
wanting
it
more.
keep
And
going, or have we done it enough?
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not really sure that. I mean, I feel like eventually something's gonna have to maybe change, but for now, I think it's good where it's going, and there seem to be a lot of people that are enjoying it. So as long as people are doing it and it's making the sport, better, it's improving the sport, kind of in the time being. I think that's a productive thing. So yeah, I mean, overall, I think they're good. I do think
Yeah.
so.
Alex, dude, you're clapping like when she says, "I'd rather do it in person." Well, who wouldn't rather do it in person tournament? It's not. That's like the dumbest clap you've ever done in my life.
Get
Like, come
out
on.
of here,
It's
man.
obvious
You know
that
what,
everyone
though?
would rather
I'll tell you why.
go do that.
I'm going to tell you why. Because Sammy posted something like a week ago. All right. And I'm like, oh, it was so perfect. And do you remember what I'm talking about, Sammy?
Yes. Yep.
And it was so right on. And it was just the crowds around a ring as if it was a run. I don't even think it was a runoff. And we all know that once you're watching like the runoffs sometimes are even cooler than the finals themselves. Right.
Right.
Most of
So
them.
Yes.
Right.
this I don't even think was that. This
Well,
video, I
especially
think it
for
was just
junior.
of a division. But the division itself, like
Yeah.
they were just you had great performers. And I think what you were saying, Amy, is like I can't wait to get back to where there's crowds like this again.
Right.
Crowds like that.
And
So
the amount we may not
LeBron.
have. Yeah. Go ahead and talk about that, Sammy. Yeah.
So I'm sure a lot of people know by now, but I'm a super big, like old school, old fashioned, martial arts supporter. My two main instructors for sport karate were Matt Emick and Daniel Sterling, and they were absolute legends. If you're talking about,
Right.
mid 2000s, that was them. And I mean, they were on Paul Mitchell. They were the best of the best. So it's kind of interesting to see how styles have changed throughout my time on the NASCA circuit. And I seem to gravitate more towards the old school style where it was, and there's nothing wrong with the, style now. It's just very different than when I started. People would go crazy for 540s and gainers and corkscrews. And now if you do that, it's like, all right, can you do anything else? Like, it's like they're just looking for more and more and more twists, more flips, more this, more that. But the fundamentals have kind of gotten a little bit lost. So, and like I could always appreciate a form when people go crazy for hand sections. Like that's what was like crazy to me in that video. Like the video is from Rudy Raynon from Capital Classics, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what the year was, but I mean, his first move was a loser or like a Webster, and that's a very common move that we see nowadays. And I mean, he did it then, and everyone went crazy, and then they were kind of drawn to his performance, and you could just see the crowd like coming and engaging in his form. And as soon as he started his hand techniques, everyone was going crazy. Like nowadays, people kind of just wait for the tricks to happen and then they'll cheer.
Yep.
People don't get like hype when you start your hand sections in your form. So I kind of miss, seeing that and like feeling that energy because it definitely does help you, with your routines. But I'm a pretty nostalgic person, and because that's kind of the era that I started in, during that time. So if that time kind of feels like home to me. So I want to keep it around as much as possible. So that's why I like, posting things out there for like this kind of new generation to see what it was like when, Jackson and I were coming up.
Well, when you say keep it around, what are the differences? So like you talked about what it was like around that time. What's the difference?
Well, people nowadays are, first of all, they're doing crazier stuff, which is a good thing. You always want to keep up, grading your tricks and the sport in that sense. But I would like to keep, the basics of martial arts around a little bit more. Like there's definitely a change in the way that hand combos are structured. Like I'll just speak on hands for now. I won't even talk about like weapons, but hand combos are structured very differently now. This is going to sound funny, but my instructor, Daniel Sterling, his go-to combo was chop, punch, spin, chop, switch, or chop, punch, spin, punch, switch, punch, like something so basic like that.
So basic.
You hardly see that. And those are one of the most powerful strikes. And, we're supposed to have power in our forms. That's how we're supposed to win. But yet you don't see a lot of those basic hand combos anymore that show off power. You see a lot of like, I'm not really sure what this stuff is. I don't know what it looks like to me. I'm sorry.
Right.
I'm sorry if I've offended anybody, but I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure what this is because we're not in hip hop. We're in martial arts. So
listening to this right now, it's something just the funniest thing. If you're not getting the video of this, you guys gotta go back and watch this.
Yeah, well, you'll never see me doing that in my form, I'll tell you that. But so that's what I would like to see more of now. Some chop, punch, spin, chop punches, and not the same old one competitor doing this and then I look to my right and the same competitor is doing the same thing and I look back to another ring and they look the same as the other person.
Right.
I would like to see a little bit more different styles and like people know me for my style. People know Jackson for his style. Like it's good to take influences from, your instructors or certain people, but don't make yourself look exactly like that person. So I also think, back in the day, people were a little bit more unique. So that's what I would also like to see, in today's day and age.
Yeah, I talked, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I guess it was 2 weeks ago, Jackson. I was talking about how my instructor was John Valera, right? And he could have made me look exactly like him, and he didn't. He made what I needed to get better, and then said, this is how you elevate and show off what your strengths are. And that is what we kind of need to do instead of just mimicking everybody and just everyone looks like whoever your private coach is and whoever your private coach is and whoever your private coach is. And then everyone just looks the same. No, like find what your strengths are and make it the best and then make your basics even better, because here's the problem. You can have the best sidekick in the world that no one can do, but if you can't land in a stance, they're not going to remember your sidekick. They're going to remember that your stance.
Remember your mess up.
Yeah. So it all kind of goes together, and it's the same thing, with weapons, with forms, whatever. But we got to get back to that real, like everyone has a different style, because again, Alex, you and I have talked about this, and Jackson, you and I have talked about this as well. That 2000s era was amazing because we had people like just in the 15, 17 musical division, it was myself doing weird, crazy things. Kalman Choka, doing, at the time, he was probably the best tricker.
He was the best
in the world at that time.
Yeah.
Nick Begley, who is freaking strong, completely different, double legs, and then you have Terada, then you have Will Valentine. You had Anthony Murata. No one was the same. No one, and there was probably more. And then you had other people like Daryl Lewis, completely different, Marcel, like all of us. And that was just to get in the top 8. You know what I mean? Like, so, and everyone
the Hall of Fame.
Different. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just crazy to think of that. And it's not saying that the talent or the depth isn't there, because it's there. There's a lot of great competitors right now, but everyone feels like they have to do this. Like I have to do this move, and I have to do this move, and I have to do this move. And that's an issue. And really, to me, I think you see that more than anything in creative forms. And that really bothers me because it's supposed to be creative, not, hey, let me shove all the creative tricks I can do into there so that way I can feel like so that's an issue with me. But
I think that with creative forms in particular, on the NASCA circuit at least, I think that the rules kind of force that, because there's certain techniques that are legal and creative that are considered the most difficult techniques. And if you don't do the most difficult techniques, an illusion twist, a 540 to knee, which why is a 540 to knee legal and creative? It's supposed to be 360, whatever, right? So there's all these techniques that really don't even necessarily fit the definition of the rules that are allowed, but you have to do those techniques to show a certain level of difficulty.
Exactly.
I mean, in the extreme division, there's no excuse for it. In the extreme division, where you can literally do whatever you want, there should be more diversity between the forms. And I think going back to what Sammy was saying about the hand combos, if you watch forms, this is one of my big pet peeves: hand combos or weapon striking combos, bow, chucks, combos, sword, whip, chain, doesn't matter. You see a lot of people doing their basics only as a means to get to their tricks. And you can see it in the intentionality behind their techniques. I can't tell you how many times I've sat down and done a bow private lesson with somebody, and I see they're just doing the strikes to get to, okay, here's my trick. And you can see it in their body language. You can see it in their facial expression. And that's not the way that a form is meant to be. Right. You need to put intent behind every single basic technique that you do, and that's what makes it special. The reason why somebody in the 2000s, like a Rudy Vainon, could start their hand combo and people would go crazy is because it was a good, original, strong hand combo. But now the hand combos aren't as strong as they used to be, and they're not as original as they used to be, and that's why you don't get those crowd reactions. If you want those crowd reactions, you've got to do something to earn it, and there's nobody that's breaking that mold because, and this is probably the most significant thing of all of it, I don't know where this happened, but people went from learning about sport karate history and evolving to learning sport karate history and copying it. Right. Oh, Jackson's bow form wins in the adult division, so I'm going to do a form like Jackson's bow form. Oh, Sammy's Chuck's form wins in the adult division, so I'm going to do a Chuck's form like Sammy's Chuck form. Right? Whereas when we were coming up, we were intentionally trying to be different because we recognized that everybody else that was great was different. Yeah, but it's like now people watch YouTube and then they just replicate whatever it is that's winning, and long term that just won't work.
Yeah, well, I got the answers.
It's crazy.
All right. Go. So think about what you were saying, right? Like even Jeff, when you were talking about, well, look at this lineup of all these guys just to get out of one division. What was the name of that division?
Oh, here we go. I know. Oh, that was musical, but all right. Yeah.
Right? Open. The creative, I won't get into it, but the creative form division is designed to disqualify you. It's not designed to see who's different, because really it's just, it's just extreme light, right? There is no creative. What is creative, right? Because
unless you're Marcel Jones.
But okay, look at that. No, Marcel Jones was dope. All right. But look at, even when Jeff was winning, Jeff was beating everybody doing extreme. All right. Yeah. And that's a great example. So what is it? The whole reason was, and we're just going to listen, we're not trashing on NASCA. They're just the best. Right. They just got the best tournaments, best circuit. So they're the gold standard. Right. So it's the only reason we say it like that. Okay. So I'm going to set them up. Now I'm going to tear it down. Okay. So, but ever since, and I think it was like 2004, right, when that happened, the creativities just kind of went bang down, because you're not trying to be creative. Look at all those names you talked about. They were winning then, but really it didn't continue to go. Now, Jackson, when you were talking about, like, I don't know what happened, but we went from trying to be creative to trying to copy to now I'll watch you on YouTube. When that came out, that's when that happened.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Because what did we have to do? In order to get video, we had to go to the tournament and videotape, or we go to Black and Blue Videos and we go buy whatever videotapes we could from Wally. Right?
Right.
Shout out to Wally Faulkner.
Yes.
So we all watched everybody's videotapes. All right. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Like, there was one tournament where like 6 of my forms were on YouTube: extreme, musical, grands, overall, like the same form, like from the same tournament.
Yeah.
So it was at one point in time where it was pretty easy. If you wanted to see somebody compete, you could watch their form like 5 times over from the same event. So yeah, I do agree with you that I think technology has made it a little bit easier just to like bite off of other people. I also would like to make a comment about the creative forms, how it's kind of, and again, I don't want to sound like I'm hating either because I love NASCAR, but I just want it to grow and I want the sport to like really evolve and, you know, become the greatest that it can. But I think right now the creative division is kind of the dumbed down extreme forms division. And that's how people are seeing it. They're not seeing it as a whole separate division that is supposed to kind of be the power division. Matt would always tell me that you should treat the creative forms division as the power division, but that's not what people are doing now. You're seeing people are trying to, you know, kind of sneakily throw B twists in their forms and backside 900s and stuff like that, which yes, in the rules kind of make it seem like you can do that because of how they are written. But I think that, again, this is why we need to go back to our fundamental basics and, you know, have more karate in our extreme and our musical divisions, because it will also translate into our creative divisions as well.
Yeah, definitely. So let's see, 2000, I guess it was 2016. Finally, like after a while, people had just been wanting to have a creative division and they've been asking for it. And so I was kind of asked to kind of work on some rules, myself and some other promoters. And the way we kind of did, I was like, I see how bad it's become in NASCAR, how it's just a copycat division and it's just everyone does the same thing. Like, let's not do that. So when I was kind of working on the rules with some of the different promoters, I was like, let's limit the gymnastics, get rid of gymnastics, but don't limit the martial arts. So like, we didn't have a spin rule because that was limiting the kicking, right? So it was, you couldn't go upside down. You couldn't do this or that, but you weren't going to limit the creativity of the martial arts. You were going to limit the creativity
that division was going to be
of the gymnastics. Get the gymnastics out of there and do that. So it's a karate creative division. And it was good, but you know, that was also at the dying ages of NBL. So we weren't really getting to do, you know, and then you also had where it's tough when you go to one tournament and these are the rules and you go to another tournament and these are the rules. But for me, I thought that was a cool way to make it because you weren't limiting, you know, and it made it different. You know what I mean? Like if you were a big jump kicker, you could do that. If you were a spinner, you could still kind of have that. If you were a standing kicker, you had your different styles instead of everyone kind of being lumped into the same thing. So, but I think there needs to be some changes in the rules big time. I mean, why? Okay, so it's illegal if you do a 5-4 land on one foot, but it's not illegal if you do a 5-4 land on your knee. That makes no sense in the world to me. You know, and then there's just so many different things. And then, you know,
land on their knees.
The name of it is a 720, but you really don't spin 720 degrees in the air.
Really 360.
So, right. So yeah. So it's crazy. Go Jackson.
The first thing I want to say is I love that rule. I love the Jeff Doss creative forms rule. Let people spin and kick as many times as they want to. Then somebody can throw a backside 1080. That'll be more impressive than a flash kick every day of the week. And that makes competitive creative forms competitive in the run-up.
And it's martial arts, right? It's just the elevation of martial arts.
Exactly. Now, the other problem that we haven't really gotten into yet, but we've kind of beat around it, is the fact that also with the way that creative musical and extreme is set up, is that you see a lot of the same forms done by individual competitors. They'll do the same form without the tricks. They'll do the same form with the tricks. They'll do the same form with the tricks and with the music. And so people will do the same form. Well, I have an answer for this, at least in weapons, right? I think that in creative forms, Jeff's rule works because you wouldn't allow people to invert. So that's still, I don't think that you're ever going to get people to not just do their extreme forms with background music and musical. People are always going to do that. But at the same time, that's on the judges. If the judges see somebody with an enhanced level of choreography, then reward that choreography. Don't just go with the person that did all the tricks, right? But in the weapons division, and I'm going to blow some people's minds here, I love the ATA creative weapons rule. The ATA creative weapons rule, and people that have watched my forums know I love doing releases. I love throwing my bow in the air. The ATA creative weapons rule is that you can do weapons manipulations around your body. You can spin the commas between your fingers. You can hand roll your chucks. You can roll your bow around your body. You can do the wrist rolls with the sword. You can do anything as long as the weapon doesn't leave contact with your body, but you cannot throw the weapon.
Right.
And so what you get is you get a totally different style of weapons form in the creative division compared to what you see in the extreme division, where people are going to go ahead and do all their throws because people know they have to do the releases to show that enhanced level of difficulty. And so you see two very different styles where you see kind of, I guess, the quote unquote Jackson Rudolph release heavy style in the XMA division. But in the creative division, you see some Ross Levine, Nate Andrade, even like Lauren and Casey style forms, depending on the competitor. Where releases weren't really a focus. There's more creativity in the striking. There's more manipulations with hand rolls and finger rolls and stuff like that. And there's more body rolls, which is really a lost art in bow because now the speed of the game in bow is so fast, you can't get away with stopping and doing a shoulder neck roll. It takes too long. But if you have a division where everybody does a shoulder neck roll or a scarecrow or a voodoo child and palm spins and fantails, if you have divisions where everybody's doing that, but they can all do different tricks individually, now all of a sudden those tricks have a home where for the past 5 to 10 years, you can't do those tricks. It slows you down too much.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I'm the same way. I like how they have it set up that way. And again, that was one of my biggest problems with really my problem was more with the creative weapons division than anything. It was like, you're not really the creative, you're not really limiting the weapon at all. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing changes with weapon. Like Jackson, you could technically go in extreme, musical, and creative and do the exact same form and still win. Maybe they would want you to do one flip, but I guess if you added that one flip in there, your form still would beat everybody else's. I mean,
that's happened. That's happened before, Jeff.
Right.
I mean, if we go back to, I want to say the year was 2010. 2010 was kind of like the first year I was good, quote unquote. I made stage in 2009. I made stage in 2008, but 2010 was the first year I was winning overalls. And I believe 2010 was the same year I won a NASCAR World Championship in extreme weapons. I sat my bow down at the back of the ring. I did my introduction. I did a cartwheel and picked up my bow, and then I did a bow form.
There you go.
And it actually created a lot of problems because there were parents of other competitors complaining of why is Jackson winning? Why is Jackson winning? And on multiple occasions, I heard different center judges tell those parents Jackson did the best weapons form.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm walking through. You don't have to be a tricker to win the extreme weapons division. Now, I've got a little bit too much pride to go out there and do a cartwheel today, but that doesn't mean that I couldn't, get an aerial and go in there and do it. I'm not going to do that. But what I'm saying is you don't have to be a high-level tricker to win extreme.
Right.
That's not your fault.
No.
So if you go out there and you do that and then they give you the win, it wasn't your job to decide who wins.
That's the reason
like you kind of talk about it in other sports.
In the juniors, it mattered because you got an extra draw in runoffs.
Exactly.
Three draws for winning all three divisions instead of just 2 draws is a big deal because going last in the runoff, where there's all that hype and there's all that circumstance and all the fanfare, going last is so important in a runoff because going last can change the outcome of the division.
And speaking of runoffs, going back to the creative forms, Jackson kind of touched on it, but I think a lot of kids are pressured to throw this extreme creative form because when they get into the runoffs and it's them doing a creative form versus an extreme form and a musical form, they're already going to feel like they're starting below the other guys just because they're not tricking. So they're just trying to throw as many okay tricks that they can get away with. So it kind of is leveled with those extreme and musical kids. And it kind of is unfortunate that creative is not winning in these runoffs because it's kind of just reinforcing the fact that you're not going to win with a creative form, which is, keeping these kids throwing these look-alike extreme forms that they really want a creative form.
And then, you're right. Yep.
Yeah.
And we're back to where we were. So when I was coming up, the mid 90s, really, when I started being successful, we had runoffs. We had traditional. Okay, well, we had musical and we had open. That was it. Okay. Now, if you did, you could, and then later on they split it up and they had traditional, open, and musical. So, but a lot of people, they would win the traditional division and then in the runoffs would do an open form. Okay.
Yes.
And that happened for a long time until the rules changed. And that's kind of the same thing that happens now with your creative. They kind of feel like they're stuck where I can't make it. So some people were like, what's the point of even doing it? You know, which is a sad thing, you know, to me. Like, I don't think if you ever win first place, you should feel like you have a shot to make it, you know? And so, and what is there? There's maybe what, 5 or 6 forums ever that have won with creative. I think in the past, what, 20 years that they've had
it like this though, Jeff. So if let's bring it back like an analogy of point fighting. Okay. So if I blitz at somebody and they defensive sidekick me, clearly, but they give me the point for the blitz, I know I wasn't better.
Right.
But if you awarded me the win, I'm going to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Because the whole point was to try to win. So even though I just got hit, like, all right, I took it, I'll do it again. Bang. All right, you're gonna give it to me again? I mean, I'm actually not winning, but if you're going to award me the win, I'm just gonna keep doing it. It's the same thing with forms.
Yeah.
We will do whatever the judges say will win. And if the judges keep awarding this type of form better and this type of form worse, we will keep doing whatever the judges tell us to do. The judges are literally saying, do this.
We're talking mostly about creative and open forms right now, but we see it more now than ever in Japanese and Okinawan forms.
Dude,
and the same forms are being done over and over, and it's like, oh, I want to do that. That's the new hot form, so everyone's going to do it, you know. And it's like, if I hear the name of that form one more time, I'm gonna freaking no, I don't want to. So, anyways, but
you got to bring up, you got to read Travis's comment. It's the funniest thing.
Yes, yeah. Let's see. All right, so here you go. Yeah, the names of these moves you guys are saying have captivated me. Laughing out loud. Backside 1080, voodoo rolls, and super duper inverted 775 crane kicks.
I want to comment on that real quick because it's funny, but it actually brings up something important. A little bit of a tangent, but this is important. So one of the reasons that I can list off the names of those bow tricks is because bow tricks have releases and body rolls. You can't roll a comma around your body. So bow has a different sector of tricks that you can embark on, right? Which is one of the reasons that I fell in love with bow in the first place, is how much you can do with it. But there's a reason that the evolution of bow tricks has become so much more widespread and diverse than the evolution of the tricks for the other weapons. And that's because if you go up to a kama competitor or a chucks competitor or a sword competitor and you say, hey, what was that trick that you did? The answer that you're most likely going to get is, oh, this finger spin thing, or, oh, this toss that I do from behind my back. They haven't given the moves terminology. And this is something that I credit Nate Andrade with a lot, is that when Nate Andrade was coming up with a lot of the early body rolls, a shoulder neck roll wasn't just a shoulder neck roll. That was a sunset. If you caught it behind his back, it wasn't a shoulder neck roll with a behind the back catch thing. It was a starry night. These moves had names. And when you give something terminology, people remember it, people can teach it, people can pass it on. And when people can pass on information, things can continue to grow. There was language created for tricks. And that's what allowed tricks to continue to develop. And the same thing is what happened for tricking, even though tricking's name conventions are crap sometimes. But it still allowed tricking to evolve because there was terminology. A lot of the other weapons don't have terminology surrounding the tricks. People don't remember them. And a lot of times people forget the moves that Michaela Johnson did because they didn't have names. People forget some of the moves that Rudy did because they didn't have names.
Their names, yeah.
If you give the moves names, people can remember, more people can be taught, more people can evolve.
And you can make a t-shirt with the name on it. There you go.
So are you telling me Nate Andre named?
Oh yeah,
he was going to name all them things.
A significant percentage of the body rolls that you see in competition today were invented and named by Nate Andrade.
Yep.
Dang.
I would say as much as 40%.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
In the bow form Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely.
Dang.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, one of the things I was going to say too is about that, because you, again, going back to that creative division, Sammy, you and I think have talked about this before too. It's like that division, if we had it like that, it would give nunchucks a whole nother realm, right? Because you have people now that either don't do wrist rolls and different things like that, or because they're just throwing up the weapon, or they're just trying to do the chucks or whatever. But it gives them a whole nother area. You know what I mean? And I think if a nunchuck person really like took their time and really tried to get into a division like that, their form would be really hard to beat. because the difficulty of doing like continuous like wrist rolls and all kinds of different things like that is something that I've only seen a few people be able to do, you know? So I think nunchucks would be cool in that. I mean, every weapon I think has their own way of doing it. You know, people are like, oh, it wouldn't be as fair for commas, but a good common person would find a way to do it. A good common person would find a way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, the chucks is an interesting weapon because you got to keep it going the whole entire time, even when you're striking. So even strikes in themselves are pretty difficult to do.
Right.
Actually, since we were kind of talking about the topic before, this past Diamond Nationals, well, I should say like 2019, the last Diamond Nationals to exist.
Hopefully, that's not to stay that way.
Oh yeah, let's not let it stay that way. But I went first, and I did a creative weapons form without music. Like I've been saying, I try to stick to like the traditional, sport karate route. So everyone I knew was gonna do their musical weapons form. They were gonna throw the releases. They were gonna do that. I wanted to go the complete opposite because I wanted to look different than them. I wanted to be noticeably different. That I was doing creative, and I didn't use music because I wanted the judges to hear me hitting the ground with my stances.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted them to hear my strikes, and I knew that if I used music, I was gonna look, similar to the people who were doing extreme and musical. So I was trying to go completely opposite, and I went first. I did no hand rules, no releases, nothing. Maybe a few spins, but mostly strikes and a few kicks, and I won the diamond ring.
Right.
So it kind of goes to show you that it is possible, but it's really hard for the juniors, I think, to kind of get out of that.
Yeah.
But it is possible to win with a creative weapons form. You just have to make yourself look so unique. You cannot blend in with the other competitors. If you're gonna go that route, you gotta go completely the opposite direction of everybody else. So
Sammy, you're right when you said it's hard for the juniors. Why is it hard for the juniors though?
Because they got to go through another round. They got to go through the runoffs, and that's when everybody gets compared. There's like 6 kids. How are you supposed to stand out when there's like 5 other kids doing flips and tricks, and you're the only one? You're gonna, look like the person who doesn't belong, most likely. And I think that's why it's harder. And I just feel like I said before, they're feel a little bit more pressure to throw these creative kicks that kind of don't look like real tricks. So it's not really doing them any good. It's kind of
yeah. I've seen of the past 2 or 3 tournaments that were bigger ones that were like regional ones. They like the person that has won the grands has been a creative person though. So that is something that I've seen this year that I normally wouldn't see. Was the creative forms person beat the tricking division. So it is, I think, coming there, but we got to kind of push it there. Go ahead, Jackson. I'm sorry.
I don't think it's I don't think it's a difference between the adult and the junior division. I think it's a difference in the discrepancy between skill level in a given division. Because when you have a lot of competitors that are of relatively similar skill level, then there's an arms race to see who can do the most big stuff.
Right.
Because if you've got 3 competitors, right, like in the men's weapons division, like we've had for the past probably 5 years that I've been in it, there have been 3 competitors who are all technically sound. They're in the same caliber of martial arts skill, speed, power, performance, all the things that you need to win a sport karate tournament. And so oftentimes between those 3 competitors, it comes down to who performs the biggest moves that night, who can hit their form, who can do the biggest stuff, and that's who's going to win. So in a situation like Sammy was faced with in that diamond ring, I'm going to assume that she had such a large skill gap between herself and her competition in that weapons division that she was able to just show off her martial arts skill and win with her martial arts skill alone without doing the releases and such. But especially like if you look at the 14 to 17 division for the boys, if you look at the 13 and under division for the girls, these divisions are too deep. Like no one's going to be able to win if they just show off their basics because somebody else is going to have basics that are pretty comparable and they're going to have the difficulty on top. And so a lot of the times competitors are forced into this challenge of whoever can do the hardest stuff because the level of martial arts skill is so close that they need that difficulty to show the difference. And we've seen that throughout time as well. It's not just this generation. You look back at the previous weapons division, the men's weapons division, with Kalman and Matt and Rudy and Mark. Let's just take those four.
Yeah.
All four of those guys are relatively equally skilled martial artists. They can all do good front stances. They can all extend their chop punches. They can all do good martial arts individually. So at the end of the day, who does the thing that changes the game the most? And in the weapons division, most often that was Kalman, who had the most difficult routine of that group. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So at the end of the day, you're going to be forced to do more difficulty. And when there's more difficulty, there's less traditional martial arts because the rest of your division is going to force you up to that level, which is a good thing as long as people still continue to make traditional martial arts a featured part of their performance and don't abandon it in favor of the difficulty.
Right.
Okay, so I think you're right, but I think you're missing something, though. You're missing it because, and I'm going to say the reason you're missing it is because you have been on top so dang long. You don't know what it's like down here with the rest of us, man. All right. So everybody you mentioned, you're talking about what it's like to win it. But there's 45 other people in that division that are not going to win it, right? Just the division.
Those 45 other people should be trying to win it. They shouldn't walk into the tournament thinking they can't win it.
Well, yeah.
Correct. But here's where you were right on. You were like, there's a tier of people in that group, maybe just say your division, whatever that division is, who really have a shot to win the division. But the other 30 are like this. Oh man, I can't believe all this guy's here today. Oh man, how am I gonna be hurt? Be honest. We know that happens. Even though nobody verbalizes and says that. I mean, you read body language, you see people staring. We know that. All right. So what happens is they do what everybody else does. Okay, that happens. So if those 4 or 5 people are all doing the exact same thing and they've never changed their form, all right, and these other 30 people, all right, if they're really just trying to copycat, because that's what we've seen the circuit be, whether it doesn't matter what it is, for decades, it's a copycat circuit, all right, some to a fault, some pro, all right, but they're always going to do that unless somebody grabs them aside and says, listen here, homeboy, you are not going to do it like that because you never saw Rudy do it like that, right? You never saw him do it like that. And Jeff, remember when he was on, right? He was like, I'm not going to be like everybody else. When he saw what everybody else was doing, he was just like, that almost made him want to throw up. He's just like, I ain't got time for that, right? But you need, unless that's your mentality from the start, you need to have that somebody pull you aside and be like, I know what you see, but you're not just going to keep continuing to do what you see. No, but that wins. No. You think that wins. Get away from that.
So
exactly.
A good example of that is actually like a martial arts school. Because here's the deal. This is the thing that we have. We have a lot of people that just want to go to, and no offense to anyone, because all of us teach adolescents, but they want to go to whoever is the hot person to learn from and this and that. And they think that this is going to be it. But you look at an Affinity Martial Arts who they have a slew of people that all look different. Now they have some similarities, but they're pushing creativity, they're pushing trying to be your own. And I think we need to get back to sport karate schools, creating an actual team that thrives off each other, right? That really pushes each other. Because I know when I was coming up, I was training on my own. I would go to do my private lesson, and then I would go back. NASCA, in the most part, has been that one good student from a martial arts school that is coach kind of took to another coach and said, hey, I think you can make something with him. Can you go do something with him? And then I'm going to run my school and he'll represent my school. And that's kind of what we see a lot of, right? But the ones that really have, but like you look at a Mike Welch with Infinity, and there's some other schools, you know, you talk about AKA and those types, you know, I know they're kind of spread out a little bit, But those are the ones that really push each other and do that. So I think that's what we need more of, is actual sport karate schools. So I don't know what you guys think, but I think that's where we lack more than anything, and that's where our sport is either going to live or die on that. Because without sport karate schools, you're not going to have a sport. So,
right. I have a couple things to say. Well, with what you just said, Jeff, I hopefully soon would love to own a sport karate, studio and kind of teach that as a curriculum. So that's on my future radar, as well as incorporating strength and conditioning. That's a whole other topic that I could spend a lot of time talking about. But
where do you live, Sammy?
I live in New York.
All right, there you go. Okay,
awesome.
So that's on my radar. I definitely agree with you. It's not like a traditional martial art. It's not a taekwondo. It's not a kempo. It's very specialized. So we need to kind of teach it, and we need to teach it the right way, because that's how we're gonna have the sport grow. And then what you were saying, Alex, before with that person to kind of reel you back. I had Daniel, and Daniel is not shy at all. He will say the realest stuff to your face, even if you're like an 8-year-old girl. He will, make you do your whole form with a weighted vest on. And if you're crying during your lesson, well, that's, just too bad. And I really think that a lot of people don't really understand why I almost in a sense kind of bow down to Daniel. But I think the way that I was trained back in the day is way different than how people are trained in today's age. A lot of people are kind of just, oh, you get a trophy, and I'm doing this because everybody's doing this. Daniel was that person that he was like, okay, I don't care. You're going to do it like this. And I am kind of so thankful that I had that perspective, because, now when I teach, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar, but Caio da Silva was one of my top students. He was killing it. And his form was not a cookie cutter form. His form was very unique. You weren't seeing anyone, no one before him was doing stuff that was in his form, and people were actually copying him. And he would get, he's like, oh, that's my form. So I try to take what I learned from Matt and Daniel about, being original, and pass it on to my students. And if you look at any of my students' forms now, none of them are the same. None of them even look similar. I had Caio da Silva, Madison Olson, Kayla Nunley, just to, name a few. And they were top competitors in their division, and each one of their forms was totally different. So I think, we've kind of, been saying this the whole, almost hour now. You need to get your own style. You need to be confident in it. And that's how the sport is going to, grow.
Can I say something real positive about the forms today? I'm going to say, because we haven't really said a lot of positive things, right? I think as a whole, hand combos, the cleanliness of the hand combos is so much better today. All right. I think the way people use lines and how clean it is. Don't use my hand as an example, because I can't make a clean line with this hand. Don't laugh at me, Sammy. But whatever. All right. So I just think that your hand basics today so much better than in the early 2000s and the 90s. It wasn't like that. Now you'll see whole divisions where everybody has got clean hands, clean lines the whole way.
Debatable.
Debatable. That's what I'm trying to say, though.
Yeah, I think it's there's more variety in the hands than there was in there, and so it's a little bit different, and so it makes it look like you could have an actual full-on hand section. Before, the hands were pretty basic, so you were doing it to lead up to something else. You know what I mean? It sped you up to lead to your next thing. So it's a little different.
Yeah, I get what you guys are saying. I get what you were saying, Alex, about I think it's just, I think Jeff said it correctly. Also with there's different people are using more lines up and down instead of just staying at one level. Exactly. I think that's maybe what you're trying to get at. But yeah, I'm a little confused with today's hand combos though, but I've already expressed that. But I do think that they are using more level changes, which is good, because then it does show more variety, because you can do the same move and you can make it look different just by changing the angle that you're doing it at, or being on your knee as opposed to standing up in a stance. So yes, I do agree with what both of you guys are saying.
And the reason that I hesitated was because if you're talking like late 90s, early 2000s, I'll give it to you. Because late 90s, early 2000s, it was a lot of quick little chop punches to get you the jump split kick.
Right.
The stances were higher, but it's also about what the standard of cleanliness and competition is, right? Back when Mike Chatton, John Valera, and Carmichael Simon were at the top of that division, even though by today's standards, those punches are shorter and those stances are higher, back then, that is what was accepted as what was clean, right? Where I hesitate is I think that if we compare today to the immediate previous generation, to the immediate previous decade, there's nobody today that's got the hands that a Marcel or a Matt or some of these guys. Micah Carnes had great hands. Nobody today has the hands that those guys did outside of a few.
There's a few.
Salif Salih, I see a lot of Micah Carnes in Salif Salih, his hand combos. Dawson Holt with Competitive Edge is probably one of the most technically sound hand combo artists in our sport right now. So there's exceptions, but I think in general, we don't see your Marcels and your Matts and your Mark Canonizato. We don't see that level of cleanliness anymore, and that's because of the amount of tricking that people are doing. I think there does need to be more balance. Like if honestly, like I'm a huge Matt Emig fan. Sammy knows this. Film study Matt Emig's open hand forms. If you watch his open forms, he does incredible tricking stuff, but it doesn't overwhelm the whole form.
No,
There's still the solid hands to complement it. And I feel like a lot of times the great trickers right now, their forms get overwhelmed by tricking. And it doesn't leave room for the hands.
And again, Jackson, it's like when you watch a Matt form or anyone in that era or a Rudy, their tricks weren't all the same. You didn't do 7 gainer switches as your combo. And no offense to those that did, but it's just like that's almost 20 seconds of your form right there. You know what I mean? And most people's forms are 50 seconds. Yeah. And then you're also going to add in the everyone has to put in the round off flash for some reason when you already did it.
Even if they did 8 gainers, still a round off flash.
You still have to do it just because it's like you have to do it. And it's almost like bowing nowadays, you know what I mean? Or walking in and introing, like the round off flash is become that.
I think we should have one dedicated year where that move is an immediate disqualification.
Yeah.
We should do that.
Oh my God. That'd be great.
How great would that be?
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, but that's kind of where you see more of that. It's like, oh, let me string these big combos, but because they want to get into the tricking part of it, and I don't have any problem with the tricking part of it, but it still has to be within a form. You know what I mean? And so the creativity, I think for me, that's cool that you did this awesome big combo, but the form, it actually took away from the form, in my opinion, in a lot of ways. It takes away from the form because it doesn't make sense anymore. You know what I mean? So, well, we got about 2 minutes to finish up. So
I got a question for Sammy.
Yes.
Sammy, who do you think is the cleanest, best extreme forms competitor ever?
Well, can I say Matt Emig because he's the GOAT? I might be biased because Matt was like my instructor, but this is a hard question because the first person who came to my mind was Matt when you said that.
He is.
He has such a unique style. It's full of swag, and just the way he carries himself. Even when he's like, just walking in the street, the way he carries himself, I don't know. I can't do it. What was that?
Like nobody hates the guy. How's everybody love this guy?
No, everybody loves him.
Yeah, you can't hate Matt. You can't hate Matt. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of clean people that I really enjoy watching, but I do have to say most of them are from back in the day. But
okay, so how about today though? Who's someone that maybe because you said you do a lot of training right now.
Right.
Who's someone that we're like, all right, watch out.
Oh man. Wow, this is a tough one.
All right.
Put her on the spot, Alex. Come on.
I know.
Can you come back to me in like a minute? I'll have an answer for you.
Okay,
Go to
fine.
Jackson first.
All right, go Jackson.
Oh, that means
I'm literally going to do the same
I
thing
shouldn't
with
have said
Jackson.
anything. I shouldn't have said anything. No, if we're going all time, I mean, I agree. It's Matt. I mean, the way that he would land his tricking, he would land and go directly into the stance. There was no like land and then do a spin and then hit the stance. I mean, Matt overall, I think honorable mentions in that. I think Micah Carnes is a worthy honorable mention. Could never really break through and beat Matt consistently, but he was very technically sound. Brendan Hewer was very technically sound. Marcel Jones, who I mentioned a few times, very technically sound. So there's several honorable mentions in there, but for win percentage and overall ability to do the hardest and coolest stuff with the most power and the best landings, it's Matt. And it's really not that close.
Right.
If we go right now, I'm going to go back.
Jackson.
I'm going to double down on Dawson Holt. I mean, his cleanliness it's unlike anything that I've seen from a kid his age and his experience level. Excellent stances, and not just in his hands either. It's in his hands and it's in his sword work. He's got probably, and I've said this on a podcast before, I don't remember where I said it, but Dawson Holt probably has the cleanest single sword work that we've seen since Kalman Choka, which is a big deal, right? And so I'd say that Dawson's really, Dawson's really technically sound. But I think that there's other great competitors right now that are very technically sound. Ben Jones is one who isn't known as much for his forms because he's known very well for his bow, but he does very, very clean hand combos. Even Esteban Tremblay. Now I'm just mentioning people that are on my team, right? But I mean, there are other competitors who are very, very clean. But I think that's and really very quickly here because I know we're running out of time. That's the thing that I think is so interesting about that 14-17 division is that they all have something different that makes them somebody that can win. For Dawson, it's the cleanliness. For Esteban, it's the speed, the performance. For Ben Jones, it's the creativity. For PJ Clark, Mason Bumba, it's the difficulty, right? Yeah. And so each one of those kids in that division has something that puts them back before Jake moved to the adult division, when Jake was still a junior, it was power and speed, right? So all of those kids that have a chance to win that division, they have a different reason that they can win that division. I find that really interesting, but I digress.
Right. Dude, it's awesome.
I'm still having a hard time with this. I could just name a few that I think are, I agree with Jackson, with Ben and Esteban and, really all the competitive edge guys, PJ, Dawson. I think they're, they're all great.
Training right over here.
A lot of people could be, very clean. I thought, back in the day, I thought Romani from G-Force was a super clean competitor. I know he's not into, sport karate, he's more into fighting now. He's not into the form stuff, but Romani was super clean and no one gave him the credit that he deserves. So,
love the sleeveless uniforms too. Kid was jacked as a little guy.
Yeah, I'm also gonna say Kaio, back in the day too, my student Kaio. Even, Tyler Weaver was, I think he was one of the greatest when he was competing as well. So those are just, kind of some names that I think, deserve the credit.
All right, Sammy, personal one here. You just did the Virtual Forms tour. Well, that was in December, so I can't say just, but did the Virtual Forms tour. You won. Sammy, is anybody really, this is all you right now, is anybody going to beat you before you retire, or is it just like when you decide? You will decide once you are done. Is anybody going to beat you?
I'll tell you this. If I win a Warrior Cup, I will retire right there on the spot.
Stop.
If I win a Warrior Cup, that's my last thing I need. And this is the first time that I'm saying that.
Yeah. Hey.
I mean, I kind of wish to keep competing, though, because so I'm going to be sad with that. But that would be the last thing that I could check off my box that I could, bow out.
Jackson,
and, also I should say this, too, before I, get, everyone excited here. I would love to, win 2 more diamond rings, so I have the most amount of diamond rings. So I would kind of like to go out with 2 diamond rings and a Warrior Cup. If I could do that.
I mean, you could do that this year, right? That could happen.
I mean, well,
yeah, like the end of this year. Well, yeah, who knows what's going on? But
I mean, if I have a great season and I win 2 diamond rings, if the tournament happens and the Warrior Cup, it could. But I don't know.
Then you would just be done. You'd be retired.
I would be looking forward to opening up my studio, but still staying involved in the sport by like teaching my students. Like, there's no retiring from karate. You don't just retire.
No, you
Like,
don't.
you
You
know,
don't retire.
everyone
know
knows that martial arts is a
Well,
lifestyle. So you're
how old
always
are you?
How old am I now?
Yeah.
23. I'm turning 24 in the summer.
You gotta kidding me. That's like saying you're 9. You're not. You didn't retire.
Yeah, but I've been being in NASCAR since I was 7. I'm like the longest person in the game right now, I would say. So it's kind of like I would love to win a Warrior Cup, but put it this way: if the women were separate, I would have had like 6 Warrior Cups by now.
Right.
But the women have to compete against the men. Thank you, Jackson. So you know,
Yeah.
Jackson, you know,
It's like it's like the same reason why Casey doesn't have a diamond ring for weapons, right?
Which is criminal, by the way.
Which is criminal. Insane.
Jackson keeps giving me a hard time.
She's got diamond
sorry,
rings
you
in
guys.
2 different categories, and weapons isn't one of them.
Oh man. All right.
Or if you
I
guys
can't
heard that
believe that
barking.
just happened. What a way to end a dang show.
I know.
Oh man, what did I
Man.
start? What did I start?
This has been so much fun. We can go on and on, I think, for hours. Like we said, 3 hours, right, Jackson?
I could do it.
But yeah, I know. Thank you guys so much. This is fun. We're probably gonna have to invite you guys on and do this again because this is fun, and there's so much more for us to do and to talk about. And guys that are watching, don't think that we're just on here bashing and no, we're this is what happens when people get together and talk about how to make things better, you know?
Make it a hashtag. Let's go.
That's right. But this is what happens when people get together and talk about what they love, right? And the passion and how we can make it grow and just bouncing ideas off each other. So all right, let's get this going. Thank you for being on here, Jackson and Sammy. Thank y'all so much.
I can't wait for round 2 of this.
Yes, it's gonna be fun.
I just want you to know I'm start practice my Starry Nights.
Oh my God.
Just letting you know that. All right, you go ahead.
Oh, no, that was a great way to end.
That was great.
Awesome. This has been another episode of Inside Scoop with Alex and Jeff. I'm Alex Dingman.
I'm Jeff Doss. See you guys next week.